You're listening to the Lawyer Millionaire Podcast, the official companion to the book, The Lawyer Millionaire. This podcast is for you if you're an ambitious law firm owner looking to grow your practice, clarify your finances, and cultivate passive income. Each week, we deliver financial planning and business insights just for law firm owners, just like you. And we'll also have some great guests. So sit back, relax, and get ready to expand your business, maximize your profits, and grow your wealth. Have you ever considered amplifying your law firm's brand voice in a way that not just informs, but also connects with your audience on a deeper level? Friends, today we're diving into a powerful tool in the legal sector. That's right, podcasting. And who better to illuminate this topic than a guest who has made this his life's work? Welcome to the Lawyer Millionaire Podcast. I'm your host, Darren Wurz, financial planner for law firm owners. Today, we're joined by Robert Ingalls, a seasoned professional speaker and founder of Law Pods. From simultaneously juggling gears as a litigating attorney to the roller coaster of launching one of the first podcast production agencies designed for law firms, he's had quite a journey. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's so nice to be here. I was telling you before we got on that I've listened to the show, and just being on the same show with some of the guests you've had is an honor in itself. I really appreciate you having me.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm excited to talk to you about podcasting. I hope that maybe I will pick up some tips for myself as well along the way, to be selfish.
Yeah, well, you're doing pretty good, so I'll do my best.
Well, thanks. Well, let's kind of start with where you came from. We were talking about this before we jumped in. You actually were an attorney yourself, but found that you wanted to maybe go in a different direction. Tell us about that transition.
Man, I'll say, if I'm allowed to curse here, I was losing my shit as an attorney, and I didn't even really know it. It was one of those things where you don't know how heavy what you're carrying around is gone until somebody takes it off your back. And I got into this career, and well, it turns out I don't like conflict. And it was, I don't know how much you know about a litigation career, but business development is recruiting conflict. Hey, you got any conflict that I can make my conflict? And the types of people that are drawn to these kinds of careers can, be a little bit like that.
Yeah.
And so I found myself just deep in this world of conflict, and I'd learned from a really young age that if I was going to get anywhere that I wanted, I was going to have to lean into pain and discomfort. And I knew I wanted a lot from life. And I came from a small rural community where people didn't really do much. And I felt out of place there. And I always knew I wanted something bigger. And so I learned young, like, look, you got to lean in. When things get hard, you're not going to get anything if you don't lean in. So I find myself several years into this career, and everything in my body is like, you've got to run from this. This is not for you. And I leaned in for a while because I thought, like, you don't give up. And I'm glad I did. It taught me something about myself. But it all really broke when I got married. And that's not what broke me. I love my wife. She's the best woman on the planet. No disrespect to my mom. She's right there too. But we got married, and right after we got married, she came to me just a couple months later and said, I want to have a baby. And like, when? And she's like, oh, like yesterday, basically. Like go in the bedroom and let's get ready, right? That kind of thing. And that hit me hard because I wasn't ready for that. And we talked maybe one day we'd have children, but it was like tomorrow guy's problem. And now I'm faced with the reality somebody might live here next year. And I was broke. I had student loans that were crushing me. I had not figured out how to make money as an attorney. And I'm under all this stress and anxiety that I didn't really have words for yet, because I'm just toughing it out, because that's what you do, right? And I had a freak out. I mean, I feel like mostly unbeknownst to her, but it was tough.
Yeah.
And once I kind of recovered, I sat down and I made a list. And at the top of the list was money, because none of the rest of it mattered. If I couldn't figure out how to start providing better, then things were going to get hairy. And so I read this money book, and another book from the same author on leadership. And that book said, you should listen to our podcast. This is September 15. I've never listened to a podcast before. And so I opened the app, I listened to the podcast, and then I found this other podcast called Awesome Office right after that. Tom Bilyeu's the founder of Quest Nutrition. He's the first guest on the podcast. I listened to it, and it was like that Back to the Future timeline that Doc draws, where it kind of like comes down here and it's an alternate.
Oh,
that
wow.
moment in my life feels that important, where everything just went. Because, I mean, essentially Tom's takeaway was you can be anything you want in your life. We've heard it a million times, but I heard it. And I'm sitting there and thinking, I think I can do anything I want. And I bought $1,000 worth of gear within 30 days. Now, I didn't know I was going to make podcasts for other people. That's bananas. I mean, it's still crazy to me that I do it. But I knew that the medium resonated with me. It was so powerful that somebody could sit down like we're doing right now and have a conversation. Just talk about things that they care about, that they are passionate about. Other people can just lean in and listen however long later. And it can have that profound of an impact on them. And so it just, I mean, this is the mic I bought right after I listened to that podcast.
Oh, cool.
Go big or go home, right?
Yeah.
And that's what took me on that path. I kind of just spun down. It took a few years before I started doing it for other people, but that's where it started.
Yeah. Wow. So did you like start your own podcast first? What was the entry into this world of podcasting?
Yeah, me and one of my colleagues would sit down at night and just learned how to use the gear. And like back then, the Rodecaster Pro wasn't a thing. You had to use a mixing board with knobs and figure it all out. And so we're sitting down at night, we're just learning how to do it. And then I started a podcast in my law firm. And I was getting really cool feedback from it. I was surprised anybody was listening to it. And even older clients that I wasn't working with at the moment were listening to it. And I say, this is really nifty, but I'll tell you, I had a real big problem with it. And that was, it was hard for me to talk about the law. I found myself wandering into other areas, and that's really where I wanted to be. And so I finally broke that podcast off from the law firm, but that was also around the same time that I was like, I just don't think I can stay here. Because I was trying to stay in law, I was trying like different practice areas, and so I broke the podcast off. I made it its own thing. And that's when I went face first into the world. I started going to conferences, and that's where I met my people. Where I started to meet like my colleagues, people that were very similar to me. And I just geeked out in the world and just fell face first, left law entirely, got a job at a bank and worked in their compliance department for a couple of years while I built this. And then after 2 years, I was able to quit that job. Quit it on March 2nd, 2020. Excellent timing, right? I thought I'd made a huge mistake, and but it allowed me to go all in, and here we are.
I think a lot of people went through a transition in 2020 like that. And I love your story because so many people have a similar story, and I have a similar story. I spent the first 5 years of my life as a high school science teacher, and I thought that was the dream. And I realized this wasn't for me. And I felt like, oh no, I can't leave this. What kind of a person am I if I leave teaching and become something else? You know what I mean?
But can't give up.
Right. But you can discover later on what your passion is. And yeah, life's short. Make a change. Do something you love. Absolutely.
Yeah, follow your interest. I know that that hasn't always been the reality for a long time. For most, I mean, almost the entire human history. You did what you had to do. But that's the cool thing about the moment that we're in is you have an opportunity now. Like podcasting wasn't even a word until 2004. And now it's my career. And we live in a time where you can follow your interest. And if you have the tenacity for it, there's a really good chance you can monetize it to a point where you can make it your career.
For sure. For sure. Well, let's dive into it a little bit with when it comes to podcasting and lawyers. Give us your pitch. Why should lawyers start podcasts?
I'll give you the lawyer answer. It depends. So But it really does. Why? What do you want?
Hmm.
Because frequently we want business, right? And where does that business come from? Because we're not a chop shop. We're not here to just have you show up, you record all your podcasts, and then we'll just put an intro on it, put an outro on it, and say, here's your edited podcast. We're a marketing strategy firm, and our vehicle is podcasting. And so, what is it that we're trying to get? Are we looking for referrals? Is that really where we get the bulk of our business? Because if it is, your podcasting may be a referral podcast. Michael Cowan with Trial Lawyer Nation is a really good example. He's been doing this for years, and he has a podcast for other trial lawyers where he's talking, breaking down cases. He's also bringing on some of the most exceptional trial lawyers around the world and talking to them about their verdicts, getting to know them, their tips, but he's networking with them too, getting to know them, bringing them in, kind of like we're doing right now.
Yep.
And then other lawyers are learning and listening. And now when they have a case, they have a trucking case, and it's a little bit, a little bit big for their britches at the moment. And who are they going to send that to? Oh, I know this guy. You have that feeling of reciprocity too, where he's given you so much. Like you have gone into court and used something that he told you and ended up getting a really good result. Whew. That's valuable. And so he's creating relationships with people all over the place that get to know him, like him, and trust him. And that's going to help his referral game really big. But then let's take a PI firm that relies a lot on search marketing. They have a really big funnel of leads that are falling into their website. What do those leads want when they get there? They want to get nurtured, whether they know it or not. They want to know that this is where they should stay, because they don't really want to leave the website once they get there. They want, when they get there, they really do want you to be the person and them to be done. They want to hire you to take their problem and just make it all better.
Yeah.
And it's your job to nurture them. It's your job when they get there to show them why it's you. And so we're making content that speaks directly to the pain point. Because if you're a PI firm and they're on your website, something bad happened to them or someone they love, and they want to feel better about the bad thing. And it's your job to tell them, I've been there. I know where you are. I have stood beside you 1,000 times. I know the pain you're in.
Yeah.
Here is what we're going to do next. And after that, here's what's going to happen after that. And you're going to speak to those pain points that they're having in that moment. And they're going to go, okay, I feel like this is my person. And conversely, they're going to hear you, and you might be a little salty with your language, and they're going to say, that's not my person. Equally important. Because you don't want to waste your, you're going to go on get in a really long relationship with this person. It's a qualifying device. To say it is or it isn't. I think both are equally important, because we've all been in relationships with clients that we wish we would have vetted just a little bit better.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's, kind of an unintended consequence.
Right. I love what you mentioned there. It's the people who listen to your show is one thing, but then it's also the guests you have on, and you're getting to know those people and developing that network. That's such a powerful tool and an aspect of podcasting that I didn't really realize when I first got into it.
Yeah, I mean, me either.
Yeah.
That was not part of my pitch when I started this company. I never mentioned, and you're also going to develop this incredibly valuable network of people that you're going to meet. And now it is. It's front and center.
For sure. Yeah. Are there some key things that lawyers need to think about that make for a successful podcast? What are the key factors that really are going to make it a success?
Number one's value. Is when somebody clicks play, the value's got to be there, and it's got to be quick. And one of the things I hear go wrong a lot, especially in an information style podcast, like if somebody has a pain point and you're saying, here's what you need to do right after you've been in an accident, and you start bantering about your weekend for several minutes with your co-host, I think you're doing a real disservice there, because you have to think about who's the listener. Where are they in this moment? Who's that avatar? What are they struggling with? Now, if you are educating referral sources and you've got people subscribing to your podcast who are listening to every episode, very different. They want to know how your weekend was. They want to know how your golf game went, because you're their friend. And so it's a very different relationship. That's valuable to them. A little bit of who you are, a little bit of what you're up to. But if it is for a prospect who's in your funnel, I'm not saying don't insert and inject personality. You should, but you don't spend that time doing it. You get right to the value. Here's what's going on. And so make sure when somebody presses play that you are respecting the reason that they're there with your content. You're speaking directly to why they want to be there and getting to the point. I'm not saying rush through it. Don't put an arbitrary time constraint on your content, but talk about the things that matter and get to the point and make sure that it's valuable. That's the thing I see not done well really frequently. And I think it's the thing that if you don't do well, none of the other things that you do well are really going to save it. You can have the nicest 4K camera and setup, and your microphone can be flawless, and no one's going to care. What do they say? Lipstick on a pig, right? It's your content is bad, and it's not providing value, and people are going to go elsewhere. So make sure you're paying attention to that, and that starts before you ever sit down and press record. You're thinking about, why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? What do they want to know? And then on the back end, how is this all going to turn into money?
Yeah.
And making sure that you've thought through that. That way, every piece of content you make, you don't have to sit down and think of all that in the moment. You've already thought of all that. And now you just think, okay, should I do this? And then you look at all of that and you say, oh yeah, it meets that criteria. It's something to check yourself against. And so if you're doing that well, you're in really good shape. I think you can have bad sound quality as long as you can hear it, and you're going to end up being a lot better off than if you don't do the first one right. But also sound quality. There's no excuse for bad sound quality today. It's so easy to have reasonable sound quality when you're doing something like this. I mean, honestly, like even if you're on your phone in a quiet space, it's going to be better than a lot of podcasts I've heard. And one bad one is they'll do it right from their laptop.
Oh yeah.
And then they're using some kind of resource intensive program to record, and that fan is just,
oh no.
It sounds like a jet engine because it's right beside the microphone. And you'll hear it and you're like, what could possibly be happening in their room? But it's because it's right there. And so they've got this really terrible sound quality. They're not hiring somebody who knows how to even make that sound a little bit better. They're using a bad microphone that somebody online told them that they should buy. But yeah, it'd be great in a sound studio. It's not great in your office or your spare bedroom.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to buy a mic, buy the ATR 2100X. It's like $60 to $80. You plug it right into the side of your computer, and it's going to sound great. And Samson Q2U, probably a little cheaper than that one. Those are two mics. I mean, there's a ton of them out there, but just get a dynamic cardioid mic. You're going to be in really good shape. USB, plugs right in your computer. That's an easy one to do, right? And then consistency is, if you're going to be making a product that you want to have value, you have to pay attention to it. I mean, think of the lawyer blogs. And I get it. I've been one of those people with the lawyer blog that never published. You write 5 articles in April, and then they don't see from you again until November.
Yeah.
And that's the good thing about podcasting, though, is it's infinitely easier, especially if you have a production team.
It is.
You sit down, you talk, you walk away, and you never think about it again. And so that's because it's so much easier to write or to talk than it is to write.
Yeah.
Sit down. Like if you wanted me to write, if you'd have sent me a questionnaire with all the questions you're asking me now, I would have never sent you the answers. It just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to sit down and write that back. Now, I may have created a Loom video for you and told you all those answers.
Yeah, there you go.
You get all that information out there, and in such a really quick, easy way, 20, 30, 40 minutes, depending on what you're talking about, and you're done. And that content's there. It's evergreen. You can turn it into video clips. You can turn it into full videos, captions. You can put a transcript. You can spread it across your social media. And a lot of it's evergreen, depending on the topic, where in 5 years, this is still content you can use to generate leads, to nurture leads.
Yeah, absolutely. That consistency is really key, and keeping it fresh, keeping it going. It's so hard with blogs. It really is. I don't know if you've seen this, but I've been on websites. You go to somebody's website and, their last blog post was from 2015. It's a bad look.
I just say take the blog down, like kill the
Yeah,
page. I mean,
absolutely.
I'm not a web dev. I'm not an SEO person, so take that with a grain of salt. But
Right,
just
right.
from a user perspective, I see that and I'm like, ooh,
Yeah, or it's like it's supposed to be monthly, but it's like March and then November or something like
yeah.
that. Yeah,
Well, it
yeah.
kind of speaks to the way that you do things. Like, well, they don't
Yeah,
seem like they're on top of it. And that doesn't mean that you're not. You're probably actually on top of your career more and a
yeah,
better lawyer because you're not doing that. But
for
what are
sure.
people seeing?
Right, right. So how do we take if you get your podcast going, you've got your topic, you've got your niche, um, how do you turn your listeners then into clients or referral partners? How do you bridge that connection gap?
So when it's clients, if we're looking for clients as lawyers, that I think is relatively straightforward because it's implied usually. They say, "What do I do if XYZ? Should I see a chiropractor? Whatever you want to talk to them about." You give them the answer. Now, I think having a call to action is fine and say, "If you want to know more, give us a call." You've established that you know what you're talking about, your credentials. They know that you know. And I think it's implied that if they got a good vibe from this, they should call you and give them
Hmm.
that information. Make it easy, make it a click where you can click it on their mobile and it starts calling you right away. And then when it comes to referral, if you're making something to educate referral sources where you want them to send you business, tell them. Tell them. Set up a
Hmm.
referral page as well, where if you have a case that you want to co-counsel on with us or you want to refer to us, go to www.mylawfirm.com/referral. We'd
Yeah.
love to have a conversation with you about that. If we think, if it ends up being a good fit, let them know. And I mean, every jurisdiction has different referral stuff, obviously, as far as fee splitting and things like that. But let them know that that's a thing, that that's something that you're doing. Don't be afraid to make that ask of them. But at the same time, make sure that you're making valuable content because Gary Vee, I read this book, Jab, 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 Right Hook, years ago before
Mhm.
I even understood marketing very well. And I love it. And that's how I operate. I ask rarely for anything. I'm not
Yeah.
going to ask for anything at the end of this podcast. I don't, I'm just not like,
Yeah.
I'm not here to pitch myself. I'm here to talk about something, make it valuable for
Yeah.
the listener. I hope somebody who's listening to this gets a little information. And if they're just not, they want to go do it themselves, I hope I've given them something that they're able to
Mhm.
take and go do it themselves. Now, ultimately, they're going to see me as somebody who knows what they're talking about, as an expert. If they in the future do want something, they're going to say, well, that guy does know what he's talking about. I might give him a call. I might see what he's up to. I might send him a referral. But at the end of the day, I don't want it to feel transactional. I'm
Mhm.
not here so some like please hire me. I want to. I'm playing the long game. I'm here. I want to be in the
Yeah.
space. I love what I do, and the money will follow. If you're good at what you do and you commit to it, the money's going to be there. And
Yeah.
so I take that approach around a lot. Make sure what you're doing is valuable,
Mhm.
and the jabs. Give them that value, and then every once in a while, when you have something of value. Michael Cowan, I'll come back to him. He's a really good example for this. He wrote a book and he used his podcast as a vehicle to promote the book as it was coming out. The book did very well. He's generated these people who've been following for a long time. He's got this consistent listenership that he is just showing up and giving value to over and over and over. And then he had an ask. And so many people, and you see this across industries, so many people, you have given them so much, you make an ask and they're like, however much money it costs, 20, 60, 80. Yeah, of course. Even if I'm not going to read it, I might buy it because
Mhm.
of how would I not help you with your book? And that's the right hook. You throw the right hook every once in a while when you've established the value and you have earned your right to ask. That's how I look
Yeah.
at it.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Robert, I'm curious, in your work, you've been working with clients and helping them develop these podcasts. Do you have a success story or a client story that you can share about, someone who started a podcast and then found some great results through it?
I will throw Calvin out again. I mean, he's probably one of the best who has started a podcast and seen just tremendous value from it. But we have clients across the spectrum. So we have these firms that have 5 attorneys, 8 attorneys, but we also have some of the biggest firms in the world with 5,000 employees on multiple continents. And one of those firms, it's a top 5 firm in the world, has this super niche practice area that you don't even, I'm a lawyer and I'd never heard of this. And, but it's the kind of problem that doesn't exist in your life until you are making 8 figures. Like it's not a problem that would even be on your radar. And they started a podcast a couple of years ago talking about it. Nobody else is talking about this specific thing. And they've all, like, over the course of the past couple of years, they've landed clients who came to them and said, we've been following this podcast. We really like it. And they've landed clients. I'm never going to lose that client. Like, I'd have to really mess up because, hey, we've established a good relationship. We make really good work for them. But one of those clients, the value in one of those clients, we are a rounding error to that value. And I see that across the spectrum. We don't lose clients. And the reason we don't, I think that's an easy answer for anybody who understands how all this works. If the value's not there, people don't stay.
Yeah.
And not that I don't think we're making an incredibly good product. We really do. We approach it. We want to be the best in the marketplace. And we really lean into that, where it's not just lip service. I'm a super anxious person, and it shows through my work, because cross the T's, dot the I's. I just really am. And so it's not that I don't think we're doing great work. I think the medium itself is incredibly powerful. And I think that is why our company grows. We do good work. We're doing good work behind an immensely valuable vehicle, because it does so many things that are helpful for marketing. One of the biggest for lawyers is it doesn't take a ton of their time. They don't have to spend so much time figuring it out, driving across town, because in the beginning we were doing it all in person. Now everything's virtual. Everything.
Oh, yeah.
So now they're in their hotel room. And like, we had a lawyer a few months ago who was in South America in his hotel room, and he was doing episodes as he was traveling, because he just took his little mic with him. And there's so much value in that. He can just pop down for 45 minutes, record his thing. He's got this marketing. It turns into all this other stuff for him. And so they're able to minimize their time commitment, which is the most valuable thing they have, the most valuable thing we all have. But then on the listener side, you're not asking them for a lot when you're giving them content. You're not saying stop and read. You're not saying, so slow down, watch this. You're saying, what are you about to do? Oh, no, I'll come with you. You're gonna walk the dog. You're gonna go run. You're gonna go to the gym. You're gonna drive to work. Do all those things. I will also provide value to you while you're doing that. You are selling someone their time back when you don't make them stop. And that's why audiobooks have blown up. That's why podcasts have blown up. And that's why businesses podcasts are creating so much value, because it isn't a huge time commitment. And honestly, building the value that you build through a podcast, when you compare that with how much it costs to make a really good one, it's excellent.
Yeah, and you can learn so much. You can be in your house vacuuming or sweeping the floor and listening to an audiobook or a podcast, and meanwhile you're learning about salesmanship or business fundamentals or whatever it is, and you're just turning that extra time into more time, which is really an amazing thing. So thank you so much for highlighting that.
Oh yeah, it reminds me of The Matrix, where they sit Neo in the chair and they plug that thing into the back of his head, and they just start uploading shit into his head, and he's like, I know Kung Fu, right? And that's how it feels to me. We can just beam stuff in no matter what we're doing. I'll go work in the yard. I have put off hiring all my landscaping out just because that's my time now. It's my time to go do a few hours of work and just educate myself. And I heard Tony Robbins talk about this early on in my personal development career. He's like, I read so many books because somebody sat down and synthesized an entire body of knowledge into a few hundred pages, and I can put it in my head in just a few hours. Love it.
Fantastic. Well, Robert, our time has just flown by here. It's been great talking with you. I've got one more question I want to ask you. And that is, what is your millionaire mission? And what I mean by that is, what's your big goal? What are you driving for?
Oh, I mean, eight figures is the minimum of this business, this specific business. And honestly, I used to keep that to myself.
Hmm.
And now it's very strange the way mindset works, because it was mindset. I thought, oh, well, that seems like a lot of money. I don't want to tell anybody my big, hairy, audacious goal around that. And now it seems, I don't want to sound ridiculous, but it's not that big of a number.
Yeah.
Well, just when you start to understand, when you see the matrix, when you back up and you actually see how all things work and you start getting in, and then you just sit down and you do some rough math and you go, oh, yeah, that's not nearly as much money as I thought. It's super attainable. But I made that goal in the beginning, that this business is an eight-figure business. And well, I also drew that up as my fuck you number. Like, if I have that in the bank, I never have to do anything again in my life I don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I can live on that interest.
Yeah.
And
that's, have those goals and shout it out. That's great. A lot of times.
I'm definitely going to make that now. Like, I mean, I
Right.
know it's a foregone conclusion to me.
Yeah.
But it's still, I mean, I can't stop. I can't stop now. I still got to do it.
And this is a whole other topic, but a lot of us have, grow up where we have shame around money because it's not something it's polite to talk about. And so we're afraid to make those kind of bold statements. But kudos to you, that you are willing to make that statement and make that claim. I love it.
Yeah, well, you got to have something to chase for too, and just getting your head around money, and it's not evil.
Yeah.
It's, I think I heard Tom Bilyeu say this first. Money just makes you more of who you already are. So yeah, if you're an asshole, yeah, it's probably going to exacerbate that specific quality of you. So
yeah, for sure. Well, Robert, how can our guests learn more about you or get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
Lawpods anywhere. Type it anywhere and you'll find us. That was very thoughtful on our spot. Lawpods.com. I spend most of my social media time on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me there, Robert Ingalls. There's not many of us, and I can guarantee I'm the only one at this point doing podcasting. But connect with me there, shoot me a message. I'm always happy to talk. One of my favorite subjects is mental health in the law and why you should leave the law. But always happy to chat about podcasting too. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Good stuff. Thank you so much. All right. Well, and we thank our listeners too for joining us today. We appreciate your support. If you haven't already, please take a moment to leave a review and subscribe to the Lawyer Millionaire Podcast. Your valuable feedback helps us bring you insights tailored to your needs, bridging the gap between law practice and financial success. We also encourage you to check out our website, thelawyermillionaire.com, for more resources on financial planning for law firm owners. While you're there, sign up for our newsletter to receive the latest updates. I'm Darren Wurz, and I'll see you next time.